Welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be looking at Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind.
It's a pretty ambitious book.
It is, and we're going to try to extract the most, fascinating bits from it.
Yeah, it's a really sweeping narrative. It covers the entire span of human history.
From the very first humans to the future we're shaping right now.
Exactly.
So let's start at the beginning
Okay.
with the cognitive revolution.
Right.
So around 70,000 years ago, something changed in Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
And it set us on this completely different path from other human species.
Yeah, this is a real turning point.
And it wasn't just about like bigger brains or anything like that.
Oh, yeah.
So what was it about this revolution that made us so different?
Well, Harari argues that it was the development of our capacity for language and abstract thought.
Okay.
And this allowed us to create what he calls imagined realities.
Imagined realities.
Yeah, things like gods, nations, laws,
Okay.
money, companies.
These are all things that don't exist in the physical world.
They only exist in our mind.
But they have this huge impact on how we behave.
A huge impact. It shapes our entire reality.
So it's not just that we could talk about the weather.
Right.
It's that we could talk about things that didn't actually exist.
Exactly. And not only talk about them, but get other people to believe in them.
To believe in them, too.
That was crucial for our success.
Because it allowed us to cooperate.
Yeah, in much larger and more complex ways than any other species.
Right. You think about a chimpanzee troop.
Right.
It can only get so big before,
Before social order breaks down, yeah.
Yeah, but humans, we can build these massive cities, empires, global religions,
Exactly.
all based on these shared stories and beliefs.
Yeah, imagined realities that gets together.
And there's this really fascinating example that Harari uses
Oh, yeah.
to kind of illustrate this early leap in cognitive ability.
Uh-huh.
And it's this Statel Lion Man figurine.
Oh, yeah, that's a great example. It's
Right.
this tiny sculpture found in Germany. It dates back almost 40,000 years,
Wow.
and it depicts a human body with a lion's head.
A lion's head, okay.
Now, no one knows for sure what it meant to the people who created it,
Right.
but it suggests that early sapiens were already engaging in symbolic thought,
Okay.
possibly exploring ideas of spirituality or mythology.
So they were thinking beyond the concrete world around them.
They were tapping into something else, something more abstract, something more
Imaginary.
imaginary, yeah.
Which is really interesting because that ability to imagine,
Right.
to believe in things we can't see or touch,
Mhm.
is still the bedrock of so much of our world today.
Absolutely.
From money to
Ah.
the concept of human rights.
To nations, to corporations, to the internet.
It's all based on these shared beliefs in things that don't physically exist.
That's the power of the human imagination.
But then Harari takes us to this turning point
Okay.
that he calls history's biggest fraud,
History's biggest fraud.
the agricultural revolution.
Now, that's an interesting way to put it.
Right. Because we tend to think of farming as this great leap forward, right? The beginning of civilization.
It's the standard narrative.
Right.
But Harari challenges that.
He does.
He argues that the shift from foraging to farming,
Mm-hmm.
while it ultimately led to settled societies and larger populations,
Yeah.
it also trapped humans in this cycle of work and worry.
So instead of, wandering around gathering nuts and berries,
Yeah, living off the land.
right, suddenly we're tied to the land.
We're toiling endlessly to cultivate these crops
Right.
at the mercy of the elements.
Yeah.
And prone to famine if the crops fail,
And we're also living in close proximity to animals and to each other.
which leads to the spread of infectious diseases.
Diseases that foragers
Rarely had to deal with.
rarely had to deal with.
Exactly.
So it wasn't exactly, a walk in the park.
Oh, it wasn't.
And Harari uses this really interesting archaeological site
Oh, yeah.
to challenge these assumptions about the origins of agriculture.
Okay.
It's called Göbekli Tepe
Göbekli Tepe.
in Turkey.
Now, this is a fascinating site. It's a complex of massive stone pillars
Wow.
and these intricate carvings
Okay.
dating back to around 9,500 BC.
So that's even
Before-
really early.
Before pottery,
Wow.
before settled villages.
So it suggests that maybe temples
Yes.
and ritual sites
these imagined realities we were talking about,
came before agriculture.
it's a really intriguing idea.
Yeah.
It challenges the traditional narrative.
Yeah, so maybe it wasn't just about, finding a more efficient way to get food.
Right.
Maybe it was about something deeper.
Yeah, like a need to come together
Right.
to create these shared experiences,
It's shared belief.
to build something bigger than themselves.
Which leads us to another complex chapter in our relationship with the natural world.
Yeah.
The domestication of animals.
The domestication of animals, yeah.
It's a story of evolutionary success.
For some species, at least.
Right. But it's also a story of immense suffering.
That's true.
So you have these species like chickens and cows
Uh-huh.
that have reproduced in numbers far exceeding their wild counterparts
Right.
thanks to human intervention.
They've essentially won the evolutionary lottery.
Right. They've hit the jackpot.
But at what cost?
And Harari doesn't shy away from the dark side of this story.
No, he doesn't.
He describes these horrific practices involved in animal domestication.
Yeah.
Like slicing off parts of pigs' noses to prevent them from foraging.
So they can't root around for food.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder that our relationship with animals
Mm-hmm.
has often been one of
Exploitation.
exploitation and cruelty.
And control.
Though I guess it's worth noting that not all domesticated animals have
Oh.
suffered equally.
That's true.
You have sheep raised for wool or pets bred for companionship,
Yeah, they might lead relatively comfortable lives.
compared to, factory farm animals.
Right.
But it still raises that question
Yeah.
of whether we can ever truly justify this level of control
This level of dominion,
over other living beings.
it's a complex ethical dilemma.
It really is.
And it's one that we're still grappling with today.
And it all circles back to this idea of imagined orders.
Imagined orders.
Right, these shared myths that
Ah.
shape our reality.
The stories we tell ourselves,
These imagined orders.
whether they're religions, empires, legal systems,
Yeah,
they've played a huge role in shaping human history.
yeah. Harari uses the Code of Hammurabi as an example.
Oh, yeah, the Code of Hamurabi.
It's a Babylonian law code.
It's from nearly 4,000 years ago.
And it's filled with all these detailed rules and punishments.
That's very specific about what happens if you steal a sheep or damage someone's property.
But it also asserts that this legal system is
Ah.
rooted in these universal and eternal principles of justice.
Dictated by the gods.
So even back then,
Yeah.
they're using these grand narratives.
To legitimize their power structure.
Right, don't question the king, folks. It's the will of the gods.
Exactly.
And it's not just ancient history. Harari argues that even seemingly simple things, like our modern concept of
individuality
are shaped by these imagined orders.
by these shared beliefs.
And he uses a really interesting example.
What's that?
A child's bedroom.
A child's bedroom, okay.
So think about how a child's bedroom
Yeah.
is often their own private sanctuary.
Right.
They can decorate it however they want.
They can shut the door.
Right.
They can even lock parents out.
Yeah, it reinforces this idea
That they're a separate individual
with their own unique identity.
with their own autonomy
Yeah.
and their own space.
Yeah.
But Harari points out that this concept of the individual,
Mm-hmm.
with its emphasis on privacy
Yeah.
and personal space,
It's a relatively recent cultural invention.
it is.
It's a product of our particular imagined order
It might seem natural and inevitable to us,
because we've grown up immersed in it.
but there have been many other ways of organizing human societies.
Based on very different ideas about the self and the collective. And that's just the beginning.
Yeah, we've only just scratched the surface of Harari's exploration of human history.
Harari goes on to explore how money, empires, and universal religions have all contributed to the unification of humankind,
For better or for worse.
for better or for worse.
It's a complex story.
It is a complex story.
So you've got these empires expanding their reach,
Actually,
right?
spreading across the globe.
And then back in Europe, you have this other revolution brewing.
The Industrial Revolution.
Exactly, the one that would completely transform how we produce and consume goods.
And really even how we think about our place in the world.
Yeah, it changed everything.
This is where we start to see the rise of factories, mass production, all those technological advancements.
Yeah, all those things that have shaped the modern world.
Like the steam engine.
The steam engine,
Uh-huh.
harnessing the power of coal to drive machinery.
Led to this huge increase in production in industries like textiles.
Exactly, it was a game changer for sure.
Then you have the internal combustion engine.
Right, harnessing the power of petroleum.
Suddenly you have this thing that had mostly been used for waterproofing roofs.
Yeah, what a weird thought.
And now it's fueling cars and trucks and airplanes.
I guess you could say it was a fuel-injected revolution.
Yeah, I like that.
A fuel-injected revolution.
But all this increase in productivity, this abundance of goods,
Yeah.
it led to another big shift, right?
Consumerism.
Consumerism.
The idea that buying new things is the key to happiness and progress.
which seems so ingrained in us now.
It does, doesn't it?
But it wasn't always this way,
No, the Industrial Revolution really shifted us from this world of scarcity.
where, frugality was a virtue,
Right, you had to make things last,
to a world of abundance,
where buying new things became a symbol of progress.
almost like a measure of your worth.
Exactly. How much can you consume?
And it was like we were constantly being told, buy this, buy that, and you'll be happier, more successful, more fulfilled.
Yeah, and this consumerist mindset, combined with this focus on mass production,
Yeah.
it had a pretty significant impact on the environment.
We're talking deforestation, pollution, depletion of resources,
All in the name of economic growth.
and an endless consumption.
Yeah, the idea that we always need more.
Which brings us to a pretty fundamental question, right?
Yeah.
Despite all this progress,
Yeah, all this material wealth, all this technology.
are we actually any happier?
That's the big question, isn't it?
I mean, Harari really grapples with this in the book.
Yeah, he asks, is all this progress really worth it?
If it doesn't lead to greater well-being.
Yeah, it's a question that I think haunts the modern era.
It does.
On the one hand, we've made incredible strides in reducing poverty, hunger, disease.
We live longer, healthier lives.
We have access to more information and entertainment than ever before.
But on the other hand,
We face new anxieties, new challenges.
climate change, social isolation, political polarization.
The constant pressure to consume, to achieve, to be better.
It feels like this never-ending treadmill.
And it's hard to know if we're actually getting anywhere.
And Harari points out that happiness,
Yeah.
it's complex.
It's not just about material wealth.
Right. It's also about our expectations, our sense of meaning and purpose, our social connections.
And those things have been profoundly disrupted by the pace of modern life.
Yeah. He makes this interesting observation that as material conditions have improved for many people over the past few centuries,
Yeah.
our expectations have also risen.
Sometimes even faster.
Yeah, and we're bombarded with these images of wealth, beauty, success,
Which can lead to feelings of inadequacy.
even if our basic needs are met.
It's like we're constantly being told that we're not enough,
Right.
that we need to buy more, do more, be more.
And it's amplified in the age of social media,
Oh, absolutely.
where we're constantly comparing ourselves to others.
It can be really detrimental to our well-being.
It makes you wonder if all this connectivity
Right, all this technology that's supposed to bring us together.
is actually making us feel more isolated and alone.
It's a paradox, isn't it?
It is, and it brings us to the final chapters of Sapiens, where Harari really starts to explore the future of our species.
The future of Homo sapiens.
And this is where things get really mind-blowing, because we're talking about a future shaped by intelligent design,
Intelligent design.
where humans are starting to manipulate the very building blocks of life
You're transcending the limits of natural selection.
and stepping into this realm where we can potentially design our own evolution. You
Well,
think about technologies like genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, bionic limbs.
What was once science fiction is rapidly becoming reality.
It is a great example of this is the Human Genome Project.
Oh, yeah, the Human Genome Project.
Which maps the entire human genome back in 2003.
Right, it was a huge scientific undertaking.
And it opened up this incredible potential for personalized medicine gene editing, the possibility of even creating designer babies.
It's both exhilarating and a bit terrifying, isn't it?
It is, we're gaining the power to rewrite the code of life.
We're talking about tools like CRISPR,
Yeah.
which allow scientists to precisely alter DNA sequences.
You could cure genetic diseases, enhance crops, modify human traits.
The potential benefits are immense,
They are.
but so are the ethical questions.
Yeah, it's like we're standing on the edge of this uncharted territory.
And we have to be incredibly careful about the choices we make,
Because those choices will shape not just our future.
but potentially the future of life itself.
We're almost like becoming those gods that we imagined way back when, right?
And with that power comes such a responsibility.
Yeah, we see it all through history, how these revolutions, even
Yeah.
the ones that are meant for good, they can have these unintended consequences.
Absolutely.
Like the agricultural revolution, it
Yeah.
led to larger societies, but it also led to hierarchy and inequality.
Exactly. More complex societies, but also more problems.
The scientific revolution gave us, incredible knowledge.
But it also fueled colonialism
Right.
and exploitation,
And the Industrial Revolution,
Yeah.
it brought mass production.
but also exploitation, environmental damage.
So now as we're entering this era of intelligent design,
Mhm.
we have to be so mindful
Yeah,
of these choices that we're making.
because they're going to shape not just our future,
Right.
but maybe the future of life itself.
And Harari really doesn't shy away from the tough questions.
No, he doesn't.
He talks about the ethical dilemmas,
Of genetic engineering.
the risks of AI, getting out of control,
Runaway artificial intelligence.
the potential for these new forms of inequality.
Moving conflict.
Yeah, and he challenges us
To think long-term.
to think about, the impact of our actions
Not just on ourselves, but on future generations.
on the planet.
Yeah, the whole shebang.
And it all comes back to that question,
What do we want to want?
what do we want to want?
If we can engineer our desires, what does that even mean?
Right. What does that say about free will, about happiness, about, just being human?
It's a question that really gets to the heart of who we are.
It really does. And it's a lot to think about.
Yeah, it's a lot to ponder.
But I think ultimately, Harari's book is hopeful.
I think so too.
He believes that we have this capacity
To make wise choices.
to use our knowledge and our technology for good.
Yeah, to create a future that's both prosperous and sustainable.
He reminds us that we're not just puppets of our genes or our circumstances.
We have agency.
We have the ability to think critically,
To question our assumptions.
to imagine these different futures.
And to make conscious decisions about the world we want to live in.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into Sapiens,
Yeah.
I'm left with this sense of awe,
Yeah.
at how far we've come as a species.
From those early hunter-gatherers.
to this point where we're on the cusp of reshaping life itself.
It's a pretty remarkable journey.
But it's a journey that's not over.
No, it's far from over.
We're at this really crucial point.
Where the choices we make now,
They have these huge consequences.
they will ripple out for generations to come.
It's exciting, and it's a little daunting.
It is a bit of both.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive,
We have.
and I hope it sparked some curiosity,
Yeah. For the listeners out there.
Maybe you're seeing human history in a new light,
Or maybe you're thinking about those big questions.
about the future.
About who we are and where we're going.
So as you go forward from this deep dive,
Yeah.
I just want to encourage you to keep exploring these ideas.
Just keep questioning, to keep imagining.
What kind of future do you want to want?
And what are you going to do to help bring that future into being?
Because the answers to those questions,
They're not just going to determine the fate of Homo sapiens,
right,
but maybe the fate of life itself.